Hello, everybody, and welcome to Redmen TV and your latest edition of Expert Insight. My name is Dan Club, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by football data editor for Op the Joe and all-round Liverpool stats master, Michael Reid. Michael, how you doing, mate? You well?
You give me a big build up there, Dan. Appreciate that. Yeah, well,
Worthy of it.
I'm not bad. I'm not bad.
Good, no, mate. We appreciate you coming on, buddy. And we're here to talk about the issues or the potential non-issues facing the Reds this summer in the transfer market ahead of the season regarding the homegrown quota. And it's something that I think a lot of people have sort of touched upon. It's the homegrown quota is kind of two words that get thrown into conversations around the transfer stuff and then never spoken about again, really. But you highlighted in a tweet yesterday that I think it's fair to say went viral, perhaps thanks to Paul Joyce, but it went viral anyway. You highlighted where Liverpool are at in terms of their current state of play. I don't know if you've got the tweet there or the stats there. Or do you want me to go through it? Or
You go through it. That's fine by
I'll go
me.
through it, yeah. So in terms of the figures you put up on the graph, obviously the non-homegrown slots are currently taken up by Alisson, Adrian, Virgil van Dijk, Ibu Kanate, Kostas Tsimikas, Andy Robertson, Joel Matip, Fabinho, Thiago, Alexis McAllister, new signing of course, Louis Diaz, Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo, Diogo Jota, and Darwin Núñez, which leaves two spaces, I think I'm right in
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then the current homegrown slots taken up by Keith Kelleher, Joe Gomez, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Jordan Henderson, Curtis Jones, Reece Williams, Nat Phillips, and Sepp van den Berg. Now, obviously, Sepp van den Berg especially hasn't been around at all, quite frankly. He's just spent the season on loan
Yeah.
at Schalke. I mean, the first thing I want to pick up on that actually is, having played a lot of football manager in my time, is the sort of the nuances in the homegrown stuff, because some of it's homegrown in this country, not necessarily by that academy.
Yeah.
How does that all look and how does it all work, I guess?
So to be a homegrown player, the rule is you have to have played or been registered to an English or Welsh club, to include like Cardiff and Swansea, for 3 years before the age of 21. So it's nothing to do with your nationality. You can be from any country, but so for example, Bajcetic at Liverpool, he's 18 at the minute. He joined us at 16, so he will, by the time he turns 21, he will have had 3 years at Liverpool. He would be a homegrown player, even though he's Spanish, and in fact his dad's Serbian, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but he would be a homegrown player. So it's nothing to do with nationality. It's just that is the rule. So then once you are above the age of 20, once you turn 22, you're then a senior player. And the Premier League rules of that at the minute are that to have a 25-man squad, you have to have 8 homegrown players. Now, that basically what that means is you're allowed 17 that aren't homegrown in that 25-man squad. If you only have 7 homegrown players, that's fine. It just limits you to a 24-man squad. So for every one homegrown player below 8, you are then restricted to your squad. So if you have no homegrown players, it's fine, but you'd be restricted to a 17-man Premier League squad. Those are the rules. So that's why I sort of explained in that tweet, because I think a lot of people don't realise that when they're saying, oh, I want to sign this player A, B, and C, but then they don't really realise that the shape of the squad doesn't really allow for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And do you think, I suppose, I would say it's optimal to have a 25-man squad. I think Jurgen Klopp would probably agree on that. Now, obviously, some of the names you mentioned there, Alexis McAllister is a new face. Obviously, the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, James Milner, Naby Keita have all left the squad, so it is a slightly different makeup. And obviously, Sepp van den Berg, as I mentioned, hasn't been around. But you would imagine Liverpool would want to head into the season with all 25 of those slots taken, you would have thought?
Last season, the start of the season with 23 taken, then added Gakpo, so it became 24. But Liverpool were restricted to 24 because I think they only had 7 homegrown players. Obviously, that's not the case this season. If Reece Williams has gone, but you could then say we've got Vyacheslav Liaros as a backup goalkeeper. He counts as homegrown. So, yeah, I think Liverpool haven't actually had a 25-man squad, certainly not last season. Man City last season had a 21-man squad. And obviously we know that their depth doesn't necessarily come in the fact that they've got 25 players. They've just got 17 or 18 players who are probably starters for most Premier League teams, which is what most others don't have. They don't have many squad fillers, whereas even at Liverpool, a good team who've had success in recent years still have, what some would call as squad fillers, certainly at the elite level. So I think, I think Klopp's happy working with a 22, 23-man squad. You've got to bear in mind players like Harvey Elliott and Bajcetic and even Fabio Carvalho last season, they don't count because they're under 22, so they don't have to be registered. So they basically they fill up the numbers to the 25, really, those kind of players. So effectively, yeah, Liverpool do have about 25 players in the squad. So it is at that optimal level.
Absolutely, yeah. And you referenced this, obviously, in reference to transfers, which is all anybody cares about right now, including myself, actually, quite frankly. So your tweet, to go alongside the statistics and the numbers behind it, said that obviously a lot of people are talking about wanting 2 more midfielders, plus a centre-back, plus possibly a forward and a right-back. And essentially you went on to say that isn't feasible. That isn't possible, given the current state of play, quite frankly. Something would have to give or take in that. And how would you foresee that happening, I suppose, the way to ask it?
I'm not saying it isn't possible, because it is. If, for example, from what we just talked about, if you're under 22, you don't have to be registered to the squad. You don't count towards a 25 man. So let's just say, for instance, Liverpool signed Szoboszlai, who's 22, so he would count and he'd be non-homegrown. Szoboszlai, Lavia from Southampton, 19 years old, wouldn't count. Van der Ven as a centre-half, he would count. And then you could even add Colwill as another centre-half, but he, 20 years old, wouldn't count. So you could have there 4 players. Frankly, you could then add Gabri Veiga from Celta Vigo, 21, wouldn't count. You could have 5 players there, and we don't have to sell anyone. So the sort of the point of the tweet was, you can't just name any 3 or 4 players. You can't say, I want Barella, Szoboszlai and Thuram. That's fine if you want those 3 players, but then if you also want a centre-back, you're having to either sell someone or, I mean, heaven forbid, not name someone in the squad, which is probably the worst situation to be in, because then you're paying a player who you can't even use. A lot of people sort of bringing up Adrian being offered a new deal, which hasn't been confirmed yet. Liverpool did say they've offered him one. It hasn't been confirmed he's signed it. And you almost wonder if that's down to the just waiting on what the makeup of the squad's going to be, whether they actually want that contract to go on. I don't know. I could be wrong. No. But it's one of them interesting ones where, because if he effectively takes up a non-homegrown slot, and I accept a lot of people think, do you need your third choice goalkeeper to do that? But then there's not many Premier League clubs who have a backup goalkeeper who is homegrown. We have Kelleher. So there's not many goalkeepers that are second choice are that sort of makeup. So yeah, it's just a case of, you can't just say, I want these 3 players, I want 4 players. You've got to be more clever than that, or you've got to be aware that players might have to leave to accommodate those incomings.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to mention the Adrian one, but I suppose you've kind of answered it there, in as much as the Kelleher thing is different to other clubs, because you do see clubs, we've done it ourselves, Andy Lonergan, of course, obviously Manchester City have Scott Carson in place. Clubs do tend to get a third choice keeper who is homegrown for that exact reason. It's squad stuff like that. So I guess that's an interesting point. Just on some of we've seen a lot of links to a lot of players this summer for Liverpool, and the majority of them, apart from probably Barella, quite frankly, and obviously the McAllister deal's already done and dusted, a lot of them do fall into the younger category, if you like. Do you think part of the reasoning behind that is what we're talking about here, in the fact that they don't need to be registered, some of them? Do you think that's part of it?
100%. To be honest, that was the point I was sort of trying to make with the tweet. I was saying there's a reason we're looking at Lavia, maybe Veiga, players like that. Colwill has had tentative links. These players are either homegrown or under 21. I think homegrown, you mentioned that, we've got likes of Vandenberg. Reece Williams has gone on loan to Aberdeen now since I've made that tweet. I believe they've confirmed that. So Reece, that's a slot available effectively. Phillips has been linked to Leeds. I know the Athletic were reporting that. And Vandenberg, again, likely to go out on loan. So effectively, for homegrown players, Liverpool have room for homegrown players. I think that is a big reason why a lot of the linked players are either under 22, so like Lavia, like Veiga, or they are homegrown, because then we have ample room in the squad for that. Whereas for the non-homegrown slots, as I said in the tweet, there's only room for 2 more unless players leave.
Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed that little segment of my chat with the amazing Michael Reid. I'm sure you'll agree it's fascinating to work out exactly what Liverpool can and can't do in the transfer window this summer when it comes to the old homegrown quotas. If you want to watch the rest of the show, head to Redmen Plus now, where you'll find that, plus all the amazing Bobby Firmino best in the world stuff, including the full interviews. Episode 2 and episode 3 is out this Friday, so go and do it and you will not be disappointed.